Hey guys, what's up? My name's Anthony. I'm going to go through a quick deck type talk that I have been working on. I think that this would be is a lot of fun to make different decks in this game. I think it would be really nice is to make some videos, give you guys some hot takes on what I was thinking about putting together for decks. And more importantly, also for my sake, is to see what you guys would recommend in improving on the decks that I've made. I think it's always nice to have like a two-way street with people to get some opinions, and I think this is a pretty cool medium by which to do it. I'm going to start off with probably one of the more popular like hot topic decks right now, which is the starter deck Final Fantasy 13, being as it's the newest things that we had and the only thing that we have to deal with until Opus 19 comes out. So everyone's kind of focusing on it, and it introduces a kind of play that I think adds a lot to the game right now, being as a lot of decks are kind of mid-range, like with mono water, or like late game with like wind and ice. So I'm going to talk about this deck and what I've worked on. So this is the deck list this is my take on it, and this is what I think is the core of this deck. So I think that these 15 cards are absolutely magnificent with one another. So Lightning, for those unaware, the way it works is that when she swings, when the first 13 character swings, everything gains 1k. When the second 13 character swings, everything gains 1k, plus you draw. When the third character swings, everything gets 1k extra. You draw an additional card, and then you deal a point of damage. And for every 13 character swinging afterwards, you get an additional draw and an additional point of true damage dealt to your opponent. Now, the reason these all work so well together is Fang was a card that, when it was printed, really had no good home, but I think at this point has an amazing home in this deck. What she does is, well, if you have 3 or more category 13 characters, then all of your category 13 forwards gain plus 2k. This does count backups, so she's going to almost always be active based on your backup line. And then she can also once per turn, only during your turn, which isn't actually relevant, being as none of the 13 characters have back attack that are worth playing, or at all that I'm aware of. Once per turn, you can decrease the cost of something by 2. It can't become 0, but that becomes extremely beneficial as you get a huge like cost payoff by paying for Venil for 1, Hope for 2, or if you only have 1 free CP and you want to play either Fang or Null for 1. Now, Venil and Hope are excellent cards because they basically search out all of your key essentials. Hope searches out literally any 13 card, whereas Venil will search out Lightning, Fang, or Hope. Also, she does have an S ability which doubles damage from your forwards, and also deals basically 4k to your opponents. It deals 2k but then gets doubled, which will have some relevant synergy, but that's usually not the reason you're playing her. Hope, like I said, you can search any of your 13 characters. It also has a second ability where you could power reduce by 1k for each 13 character you have. I don't know many scenarios where that would be advantageous, but you could theoretically do that. And then Null basically is a cheap boy with haste, but he does have an extra ability which is pretty nice, where he gets huge on swing, getting an extra 1k per swing, and then per 13 character you have, and then he can dull something if any of your opponent's forwards leave the field. So that includes things like Chocobo or anything that's gonna leave. It doesn't have to go to break zone. These 3 alone on the field would lead to Null becoming a 10k on swing. You 5k from him, 7k because he gets 2k extra from Fang, and then 3k. Oh, he actually becomes 11k. 3k from the swing because he counts himself, plus 1k for Lightning. So having an 11k swing off of that for a 2-drop is kind of ridiculous. Now, this I think is the core element of this, and then this is where I think you could start getting a little more interesting with the take. So the next card I personally love, and I personally find as like an essential component of this deck, is Godot. Godot is wonderful because he does an additional pump of all of the most relevant cards, which specifically are Fang and Lightning, by an additional 2k. And when he swings, he can give haste. If you turn 1 just put Godot on the field, it's something your opponent basically has to answer to. Because if turn 1 you play Godot, and then turn 2 you play Venil or Hope, you get Lightning, then you swing with Godot, you're going to activate Venil or Hope, and then they have haste, or you impart haste onto them, then you can do an extra point of damage off of Lightning and draw 2 cards. So they're going to want to deal Godot immediately. He's super annoying to deal with and is it makes all of your bodies like humongous for extremely cheap. So I think that you can make the decision to go either just fire lightning in this deck, but I decided to try and splash some ice cards because I think that Final Fantasy 13 doesn't have great name diversity in the fire and lightning category. It does have like anima as well, and it's gaining the new I think also anima in the new deck, but it doesn't really seem like it's going to be all that good. So I decided to splash ice. This Orphan I think is one of the most, like, it's just an absolutely excellent card. Triggering a discard every turn plus the dueling effect makes it easier to swing for game. I think this copy of Snow is nice because it'll impart summon protection on lightning, though I think it'd be very reasonable to play the Opus 5 Snow that can search lightning directly as well. I do think that this one does have a time and place, and it's a new card, so I want to give it a sleeve and see how it's working. I think as far as the second ability is concerned with regards to having a Sarah dual freezing 3 characters, that's a huge swing that could really help push for game. The Sarah that I chose is this copy of Sarah. The ability off of Fang to theoretically draw and discard is huge. The reality is that the discard is not going to be nearly as consistent as the draw. The draw is almost always going to be active. The vast majority of your 13 characters are going to be not of the ice element. However, if you can get both off, it's a huge deal. Like, let's say you have Mog 13, you search Orphan, you play Orphan, and then you play Sarah next. That's a huge turn, and that could really change the pace of the game. And then I have one copy of Caius to be cute, to try and have a huge body that has certain implications for what I'll get into in a little bit. Now, as far as finish up my forwards, I have 2 copies of Squall and 2 copies of Sephiroth. I think Squall is an excellent card. He is almost never going to want to be blocked by your opponent, so him being played even in a late game scenario, let's say you're at like 5 damage and can't get that last 2, he's just going to be something that your opponent just is not going to want to interact with. Furthermore, if you happen to be lucky enough that you have Vanille in hand also, and you have a Vanille on the field, you could combo these 2 together to deal 10k to your opponent's entire board. So let's say you're in a really rough spot, you have Vanille on the field, and you have a Hope in hand. You could play Hope, search for Vanille, and then if you top deck Squall or you have some means of getting him in your hand or he's already in your hand, you basically have a board wipe on there. So that's, and then Sephiroth I think is just one of the best cards in the game. He is got excellent like matchup against this deck, ironically, by being able to break Lightning, Fang, or Null, dual, and then coming in back attack, breaking whatever swung. So let's say Fang swung, you break Fang, then next turn you're going to swing, break Lightning. I think Sephiroth is excellent in this deck and just in most decks as well. Now, one card I think is like criminally underutilized in all of the deck lists that I've seen is this Phoenix. So the reason I particularly like this Caius, in addition to the fact that I think this Phoenix is just excellent, is that you could theoretically, on their turn as a combat trick, Phoenix back Caius. They swung, you on the stack, play Phoenix, play Caius. You pitch 3 cards for Phoenix, so you theoretically don't have to pitch anything from your hand for Caius's entry effect, and then Caius blocks, possibly kills something. The next turn, you have an additional body that can swing. That's a 13 character. It triggers a discard, and it can trigger lightning effects. Or alternatively, you could Phoenix back Fang, or you could Phoenix back Lightning. I think Lightning is the lowest payoff of that, unless you're completely out of Lightnings in deck, because it already has haste, but you could Phoenix back Fang or Caius on your opponent's turn, which I think has huge implications for the game. I have 1 copy of Bahamut because I just feel like I needed to include some form of actual removal in the game. I think that that's one thing that this deck struggles with, is finding the right balance of removal versus just pure aggression. And 3 copies of Amaterasu because you need something to counteract the board wipes that you're going to see from Earth and like from Leviathan and such. As far as backup line now, I have 3 copies of Mont Blanc with 2 copies of Hurdy. Unfortunately, the best ice fire matchup we have, you could theoretically Alma the Mont Blanc after paying for the Hurdy, which hurts, but at least it doesn't die. As far as the remainder, I have one copy of LeBro, one copy of Saz, searching out a pretty decent array of summons, each of them having their own individual place, and LeBro just being another 13 character that can buff them by an additional 1k if they're not already huge enough. I have 3 copies of Mog 13, 3 copies of Lumina as just appropriate colors that are nice because they are going to be able to search out either Vanille, Hope, and then get this whole cascade underway. And then 2 copies of Unalesca, just because I think it's nice to include additional discard to further make it difficult for your opponent to build a counter like when you're just as aggressive as you're being with this deck. So maybe I rambled a little bit. This is my first time ever making a video like this. I hope you guys find this deck enjoyable. I think it's a lot of fun. I can make a FF Dex with some proxies in it right now so that you could download it and try it yourself on Octagon. Any recommendations you guys have, please let me know. I'd be happy to listen to them and take them to heart. And who knows, this deck may change substantially based on some of those opinions. Just let me know, and have a good day. Bye.